Hare Krishna. This is a narration of the book Kṛṣṇa, the Reservoir of Pleasure, and other essays by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. About the author. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda was born Abhay Charan Day on September 1st, 1896 in Calcutta. In 1920, he finished his schooling, majoring in philosophy, English and economics at the University of Calcutta. Soon afterward, Abhay Charan Day took up the duties of manager of a large chemical concern. Then in 1922, he met His Divine Grace Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, the founder of 64 Gaudiya Vaishnava Maths in India, Berlin and London. Bhaktivedanta Swami recently recalled the key to his approaching his spiritual master. When I first started going to see my Guru Maharaj, he said to me, "This boy hears very nicely. He does not go away. So I shall make him a disciple." That was my qualification, or whatever you may call it. I would simply ask when Guru Maharaj would speak. Then I'd sit down and go on hearing. I would understand or not understand. Others would disperse. I'd not disperse. So he remarked, "This boy is interested to hear." Because I was serious in hearing, therefore I am now serious about Kirtanam, which means speaking or preaching. If one has heard nicely, then he will speak nicely. At Allahabad in 1933, Abhay Charan Day was formally initiated, and in 1936, just days before Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's departure from this mortal world, he was specifically ordered to spread Kṛṣṇa consciousness in English language to the West. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, known as Prabhupāda to his disciples, has told us that at first he did not take the mission given to him by his spiritual master with utmost seriousness. But then he was reading a Bhagavad Gita commentary written by Śrila Bhaktivedanta Thakur, who was the father of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and the pioneer of Kṛṣṇa consciousness movement in the modern age. Śrila Bhaktivedanta has written that just as one cannot separate the body from the soul while in this conditioned state, so the disciple cannot separate the spiritual master's order from his very life. Bhaktivedanta Swami took these words seriously, and gradually his whole life became dedicated to carrying out the orders of his Guru Maharaj. In 1959, he took sannyasa, the renounced order of spiritual life, and in 1965, at the advanced age of 70, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami arrived in New York City to fulfill his master's sacred mission. One must try to understand that Srila Prabhupada is neither an Indian author, nor Indian culturist, nor Hindu sectarian. The first teaching of Bhagavad Gita is that no one is Indian, no one is American. Our real self is beyond this temporary bodily designation. Our permanent identity, eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge, is with the Supreme Personality of Godhead as His eternal servant, and our position is to be situated beyond the material universes in the spiritual planets, within the spiritual sky. This is the platform of Kṛṣṇa consciousness. To think, I am American, I am Russian, etc., is our disease, and is due to forgetfulness of our eternal nature as spirit soul. Unfortunately, under the spell of illusion, every embodied creature is satisfied with his present material body. Even the worm in the stool is thinking, "I am all right." Despite so many disadvantages and miseries, all living entities are engaged in satisfying their senses and are thinking it is all right. Therefore, when the bona fide Guru comes with the transcendental message calling the souls back home back to Godhead, they do not want to come out of material engagement. Often people prefer to be encouraged in illusion and therefore pay fees to learn that they are God or equal to God in all respects and thus free to go on enjoying material life of sense gratification. So we see yoga and meditation teachers advertising that they will improve one's material facilities. They overlook the fact that elimination of sense gratification is the first step in the standard yoga or transcendental system. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami does not encourage unrestricted sense gratification or the belief that one is God or that God is impersonal or void. He is passing on as it is the information from Vedic literature that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is a person and that devotional service unto Him is the perfection for all purificatory purposes. Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is recognized as the Supreme Lord, and Sri Isha Upanishad confirms the personality of Godhead as the anti-material supreme controller and the only enjoyer. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami is teaching surrender to Krishna, the Supreme Lord. Śrila Prabhupāda is the living example of the saintly person pointed to in all Vedic literatures who is personally free from all material contamination and active in spiritual understanding. He is the Krishna conscious personality who is so dear to Krishna, who understands that the highest welfare is not to pose oneself as the friend of humanity, but to teach that God or Krishna is the dearmost friend who alone is capable of alleviating the misery of each and every living entity. A.C. Bhaktivedanta is teaching what is really common sense to our intelligence, but we are so bewildered by the glitter of material nature that we are distracted from this message. He is simply canvassing for God on the order of his spiritual master. Once Srila Prabhupada was asked, "Are you an incarnation of God?" "No," he answered, "I am servant of God." Then he paused and went on, "Not exactly servant. To be servant of God is not an ordinary thing. The servants or devotees of Krishna are so great that they are beyond the desire to merge with God. Sometimes, in their intimate association and exchange with God, they even become greater than Him, as when He allows some devotee to become His mother or lover. Prabhupada's mission is not less than to distribute this topmost love of God to all persons. It is stated in Vedic literature that a small man wants to make himself happy. A somewhat bigger man wants to make his family or his country happy. But the great man wants to make all persons happy. Bhaktivedanta Swami produces his books by speaking them on a dictaphone. He is presently working on 5 books at once. These books are a matter of realization. As he has said, when you become self-realized, you automatically write volumes of books. And one of the qualifications of a devotee is that he is poetic. Srila Prabhupada is always immersed in Krishna by speaking, dictating, singing about Krishna's glories, preaching formally at meetings or planning the expansion of Krishna consciousness movement. In the Bhagavad Gita 7th chapter, it is stated that out of thousands of men, few seek perfection, and out of thousands who attain perfection, hardly one knows Krishna. Lord Krishna also declares in the 18th chapter that the dearmost devotee of all is he who spreads the teaching of love of Krishna. Never will there be one dearer to me. Bhaktivedanta Swami's spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, once drew a picture of mridang, a drum used in Sankirtan, and besides it a printing press. He said that the mridang can be heard for several blocks, but the press can be heard around the world. He therefore called the printing press the big mridang. for purpose of worldwide service to humanity. ISKCON Press has been established for the exclusive printing of Śrila Prabhupāda's books. In 1968, Macmillan published the Bhagavad Gita as it is, translated with commentary by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. The Gita is the gist of the entire Vedic literature. Just this one book can free anyone from the clutches of material nature and fix one in eternal loving service unto Sri Kṛṣṇa, the personality of Godhead. As originally written by Śrila Prabhupāda, the manuscript of Bhagavad Gita as it is many times larger than the version published by Macmillan. Publication of this original expanded version is being undertaken by ISKCON. Another important published literature by Prabhupada is his Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. This book outlines the precepts of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the golden avatar who appeared in India 500 years ago and propagated the Hare Krishna mantra as the means of God realization for the present age. A book called Nectar of Devotion, and authorized summary study of Sri Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, which also soon will be published. Prabhupada is presently writing a several-volume work called Kṛṣṇa, which contains all the pastimes of Supreme Lord when present on this planet 5,000 years ago. Translations are also underway of the Vedanta Sutras, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and his 12 volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam. The literatures compiled by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami are authorized by the disciplic succession, which is descending from Kṛṣṇa himself. Prabhupada's whole life mission is to faithfully pass on the original understanding of Kṛṣṇa consciousness without distortion. According to the Vedic literature, this descending process is the only way to realization of the absolute truth, as the absolute truth is beyond the reach of our mundane speculation or scholarship. The author is not a retired personality. Despite his prodigious literary output, he is personally and very intimately guides his disciples through the most practical problems of daily life. Spiritual life is practical, and due to predominant material atmosphere of Kali Yuga, often problematic. As spiritual master, Bhaktivedanta Swami is the last recourse and the ultimate standard of Kṛṣṇa consciousness, and he writes some 25 letters a day to leaders and students of his various worldwide centers. He himself resides in no one place but travels from center to center on regularly lectures and gives regularly lectures. The spiritual master is responsible for his devotees. When he accepts a sincere devotee as his disciple, he promises to take him back to home, back to Godhead. No one should think, oh, everyone is taking a spiritual master, let me take one. The spiritual master as a style or as a pet is useless. Rather, his order is to be taken as one's life and soul. By taking shelter at the feet of the bona fide Guru and serving him 24 hours a day, the fallen soul can be lifted to the spiritual sky. It is said that if the spiritual master is pleased, then one can make great advances in spiritual life. And one pure convinced devotee can make many pure devotees by his example and teachings. Those serious students with an understanding of the absolute value of spiritual platform of life therefore honor the spiritual master with honor due to God, because the Guru is the transparent via media or representative of God and is distributing unalloyed love of God. The intelligent reader is invited to take to this philosophy with utmost seriousness.